Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Always Watching, or in this case, Always Listening, a podcast for topics I really don't feel like doing a video about. Today, we're discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Love is Blind reunion. Overall, I thought it was the best one yet. Did it have its flaws? Yes. But I will give Nick and Vanessa some credit. The format was a bit annoying to me sometimes. They invited previous couples to the reunion to update us about their lives as a way of saying, hey, the show works. But they also used previous contestants to promote other Netflix shows like The Perfect Match. I personally did not need all of these updates. Can love be blind? Yes. But do these exceptions make the rule? Absolutely not. So the reunion started off pretty explosive with Sarah Ann, Jeremy, and Laura. And I think the issue that people have with Sarah Ann and Jeremy is how they handled their relationship. Jeremy in particular. And so Jeremy has been all over social media lately because his ex-girlfriend went on TikTok and basically recounted her abusive relationship with him. And Jeremy is the type of guy, it would not surprise me that he kept the relationship with Sarah Ann going just to preserve his image, to say to everyone, hey, I am a good guy and I was really looking for a relationship. But from what little we see, it seems like their relationship has been on and off. And Sarah Ann came to fight. Like the minute she appeared on stage, I mean, the audience wasn't having it. The contestants weren't having it. And so they get right into it. Laura joins the reunion through Skype because she's unable to attend. And she has no mercy. So it seems that there was a lot left unsaid, and they really kind of go in on their last few days, specifically this incident with the Apple Watch. And do I believe that Jeremy and Sarah Ann were talking till 5 a.m.? Absolutely not. And I don't think anyone with any common sense believes that. And watching Sarah Ann defend Jeremy just sitting there totally indifferent, he didn't care. He didn't seem to have any remorse. In terms of Laura, do I think Laura has her issues? Yes, but I do respect her for calling him out. I guess for the reunion, they did end up holding back a lot of footage, one of them being the conversation between Sarah Ann and Laura, because I was wondering why they never had that conversation, but I guess they had. And this conversation was a lot more calm than I expected, and Laura basically said, listen, this guy is not who he says he is. Because the way Jeremy presents himself as a super stable, super rational thinking individual is not how he ended up being. There's a huge discrepancy between the things that Jeremy says and the way that Jeremy behaves. Laura was essentially saying, listen, be careful because this guy loves attention and he will do anything to get it. Sarah Ann did not seem too interested. Like, she seemed like she was already whipped. It seemed like they were two peas in a pod. And Laura was annoyed, and rightfully so. And at one point, Nick and Vanessa confront Sarah Ann about her TikTok, basically ruining the show because I guess Sarah Ann released a TikTok in Jeremy's house, basically saying this is entertainment or something along these lines. And let's just face it, do people come on this show for fame? Yes. I think the more popular the show becomes, the more people want to clout chase, people will do anything for a come up. Watching Sarah Ann's TikTok, it did feel a bit petty. And I think at one point Sarah Ann said something along the lines of, I didn't know that the people on social media would be like that. However, if you recall in the pods, I think she said she had like 30,000 TikTok followers and 5,000 Instagram followers. Like, she is very much on social media. The idea that she would be surprised that people would be investigating her location should not have come as a shock to her. And I think Sarah Ann and Jeremy, the way they started their relationship and the way they tried to justify the start of their relationship is what is irking people the wrong way. And how something starts, it's how it ends. Because according to Chelsea, they've been on and off. And again, I don't see Jeremy marrying her. For the time being, they seem pretty content with one another. But as I said, for me, Jeremy is the worst kind of guy. He is like the quintessential nice guy. On paper, everything looks good. He seems super responsible. But there's always this weird, I don't know how to describe it, like rage, or there's just something underneath Jeremy that unsettles me. Like, he just seems like the type of guy that can snap quite easily. He unsettles my spirit in some way. So poor Trevor. Trevor came on the show. You could tell that he had media training. You could tell that he was ready with his excuse. But Nick and Vanessa did not even give him a chance to breathe. They confronted him with these text messages with his girlfriend, where Trevor basically admits that he was just on the show for fame and clout. In these conversations with his girlfriend, he does seem like he loves her, talking about, will you marry me? Like, there's nothing about these texts to suggest that Trevor was single or almost single. They literally read out the text as if they're performing like a little skit. And Trevor looks horrified. He looks like his body language. He looked like he wanted to cry, wanted to be excused. And I love how Nick was like, I'll excuse you when we're ready. And Trevor's logic was just totally unsound because he's like, well, I did come on here for love. And I was pretty devastated, which is why I texted her what I texted her. And Trevor was just kind of, you could tell he was at a loss for words, because on one hand he was saying this was not his girlfriend, but then Nick was like, but then why are you asking her to marry you? Nick was not having it at all. And shout out to Chelsea. At one point she was like, I had a gut instinct that I shouldn't have picked you. And in my head I was like, no, you didn't. The only reason Chelsea, and we'll get to Chelsea, but the only reason she picked Jimmy is because Jessica wanted him. The idea that she had some gut instinct, I was just like, ma'am, like, keep it pushing. So in the end, Trevor is excused, and the way the camera just panned to Trevor as he was leaving, like, shame. And shout out to the cameraman. Like, he was panning on people. He was moving that camera around and catching people in their most, like, unflattering state. On to the next couple, Clay and AD. And, I have such mixed feelings about these two. Clay came in strong, saying, I'm going to therapy, I'm doing this and that. And everything about Clay is just all talk. I hope he's actually getting the help that he needs. And he does strike me as the type of person that wants to change, but might not be willing to do the work. In terms of AD, like, has AD been working on herself? No. And one of the most jarring comments is when Clay told AD that she's the love of his life. And one of the audience members just looked kind of in shock. Like, what? Because how is it that someone is the love of your life and you're still not married yet? And watching AD reassure this man, like, there's nothing I would have done for you. I would have given you my all. I was like, a part of being ready for marriage is knowing if somebody else is ready for marriage. AD just does not have the discernment. And it seems like they are still together. Like, they probably have some sort of situationship. But whether or not this will lead to marriage, I sincerely doubt it. And I think the moment I understood that AD had not been working on herself is when we find out that she had been seeing Matthew. She went on a date with him. There was no reason to be going out with this man at all. The reunion confirmed that Matthew was a crazy person that told two women the same story, the same lies. And we did not need footage to confirm this. So the fact that AD went out with him was a bit concerning to me. And I think AD is a good example of you can support someone all you want and give someone your all, but if someone wants to change, they will, and they will often change for the right person. And unfortunately for AD, Clay does not see her as the right person. And the fact that they're still in contact, I mean, there's really no reason for him to change for the better or to really do anything, right? To promise her anything if you're going to continue this friendship. Should have cut him off immediately after that wedding. And I wish Nick and Vanessa grilled them more. Clay does give some excuses, but I felt they were not sufficient. He kind of rationalizes why he didn't say no before the altar, how time was passing him by faster than he could process it. Like, Clay is very dramatic. And he was saying a lot of things, but it wasn't really amounting to anything. At one point, he has this very nice moment with Brett. Basically tells him that he also comes from a broken home. And he was also unsure about how he would show up. But thankfully, everything worked out. And I think Brett's words really highlighted that, at the end of the day, regardless of where you come from, you're responsible for your own actions. And you can't really put that on other people. And sometimes I feel like Clay uses his background to justify why he behaves in a certain manner. Not sure that behavior has changed yet, but I wish them all the best. Now on to Chelsea and Jimmy. And I felt like Chelsea got off way too easy. I mean, she was an emotional terrorist throughout this entire season. However, the cameraman did what Nick and Lachey would not do, which is catch her off guard. So in terms of Chelsea and Jimmy, they focused on their breakup, specifically the secret that Chelsea outed to the world regarding Jimmy's intimate relationship with one of his friends. I'm surprised that they did not show the clip, because during that fight, Chelsea was very drunk and she was saying all kinds of things to him. Like, her behavior has been quite unhinged. And on one hand, I do understand why this relationship was bothering her. And some part of me wonders if Jimmy told Chelsea about his relationship, like about his intimate relationship with one of his close friends, to basically encourage her to leave. Because from the get-go, Jimmy never liked Chelsea. And Chelsea knows that now, because she watched the whole show. And I feel like thinking about the show now, like, it does feel like Jimmy was trying to get her to break up with him. And finally, he just kind of ran out of patience. And when she gave him an easy out, he took it. But this man was basically screaming at her, like, I don't like you. Like, his body language, his whole demeanor, like, there is nothing about this man. So if I were in her shoes and I found out that a man I was engaged to was still seeing someone that he slept with, like, that would bother me greatly, and it would get under my skin. And so I do wonder, like, on one hand, I get it, he wanted to be open and honest with her, but on the other hand, knowing Chelsea, like, that was a ticking time bomb. And during this conversation about this secret, they asked the audience, like, do you think that Chelsea should have outed Jimmy? And they were kind of like, well, we understand why she did it, but it was still messy and weird. And at one point, Jimmy was trying to defend himself, and he makes a comment like she still talks to her ex. And Chelsea was super defensive, like, I don't talk to my ex. Again, I felt like the host could have pushed back on that. Like, what do you mean you're not in contact with your ex? Because this has been brought up several times that Chelsea talks to her ex-boyfriend, like, while she was with Jimmy. And so I don't believe that Chelsea is, I don't know. I just feel like Chelsea, I really believe she was an emotional terrorist. And as raggedy as Jimmy was, they kind of, like, low-key deserved each other. And so Jessica is there. And the other point they bring up is this whole issue with Megan Fox. And there was a really awkward moment when Jimmy tells Jessica that, you don't need me to tell you that you're beautiful. And you could tell that Chelsea was raging. Like, she looked like she wanted to kill Jimmy right then and there. Turns out that Jimmy and Jessica are not as close as, I guess, we thought they were. Like, whatever chemistry they had has been dead and gone. And I thought the way that Jessica handled herself in this reunion was quite impressive. Like, she came to fight, and she did not let Jimmy off the hook. And she had a beef with him because apparently he'd been doing these interviews where she felt like he had been throwing her under the bus. And the biggest issue they had is during one of their last conversations where Jimmy claims that Jessica stormed out and her tone was super rude and all these things. And I understand that being in the pods, time can be a bit disorienting, like their perception of time. However, Jessica's issue was how he portrayed, like, their conversation. And Netflix, shout out to Netflix, they came out with the receipts and they verified Jessica's story over Jimmy. And I think, again, Jimmy still feels some type of way over Jessica, that Jessica's moving on to a different show. Like, you could tell that, I just felt like that door between them was totally closed. So Jimmy definitely, from the start of the reunion, he looked like he was ready for a fight. It definitely wasn't as bad as I think he thought it was going to be, because, again, there was a lot in their relationship that they could have unpacked, but somehow Nick and Vanessa decided to ease up on them. So I think for that, they were breathing a sigh of relief. And now I'll just briefly touch on Kenneth and Amy and Johnny. So Amy and Johnny, I don't really have anything to say. They're still together. They seem to have found an equilibrium. They look like they are so in love. Like, they seem like two peas in a pod. Like, they really seem like soulmates. And I think, as I said, love can be blind, but the exception does not make the rule. And the fact that they were able to find each other is super sweet. And they seem to be living life. And, as boring as they are, I do believe now, seeing them at the reunion, that they are a couple that will last quite a long time. In terms of Kenneth, this was another moment in the reunion where I felt like Nick and Vanessa could have done more. Kenneth's whole excuse about being on his phone because he's a principal, it just seemed like nonsense. And watching all the other contestants listen to Kenneth was really funny because you could tell that none of them really believed him. They were just looking at him like, really? Like, because you're a principal? He seems to be on very good terms with Brittany. And Brittany was acting like they had no hard feelings whatsoever. And so there was a lot about that was not explained. Nick did try to go in on him a little bit, saying it felt like you were gaslighting Brittany. And he came up with some excuse like, oh, we all process grief differently and all this stuff. And it just felt like he was kind of media trained a bit. Kenneth, the way he was acting, like, it actually made you forget about his behavior and the way he totally switched up on her like a serial killer, because Kenneth's behavior was unacceptable. I don't believe that he was texting his school the entire time. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't care what school you work at. That's weird. You're on a show. You took time off. You're with the woman that you say you want to be with. If you didn't like her, you could have just told her. But gaslighting her and making her, like his behavior, especially for a principal, someone that mature, the math was not mathing with him. Overall, I felt like it was a pretty decent reunion. Definitely the best one yet. At this point, the show has become entertainment. And if they get one great couple, I think from Netflix's perspective, it's like, great, we had some drama. We had at least one viable couple. That's enough for us. You guys let me know what you think, and until next time.